And now, here is Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause.
Well, good evening to you, and how are you this evening? It has been a hectic day, very, very hectic one. But I'm here with you on Advancing the Cause. Another episode for you this evening. My viewers, yes, you've been calling me, trying to find out what's happening, but you know what? We're here now. The issues that we couldn't deal with earlier, those are gone. We're right here now, and I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy that you're interested in what's happening on Advancing the Cause. And so this evening, I'm not going to take up too much of your time because we have some guests who we want to have a little discussion with. But before we go to our guests, I just want to give some shout outs, as they would say, to some of our persons who are some of our viewers, as a matter of fact, who have celebrated birthdays and would have celebrated a birthday or birthdays today. Happy birthday to you, and may God continue to bless you. We have some persons who are just saying hi from where they are, and that's okay, thank you. But I want to say to you, please invite your friends to view the program. Ask them to share the link, and let's have a good time on Advancing the Cause. In our highlights for this evening, we have MP Figueroa wins defamation case against the Guyana Chronicle. And the hearing for the award is going to be on a later day. It's set for a later date, as a matter of fact. So MP Figueroa won the defamation case against the Guyana Chronicle. Well, you know, I was talking to some folks not too long, and they were asking me this question that I'm going to throw out here now. How do dotish people end up in executive positions? How do dotish people end up in executive positions? I don't know. And so I'm throwing it out there because these were very callous, irresponsible, and careless statements that were made by government minister and others against MP German Figueroa. And the Guyana Chronicle, rather than looking at what was said before printing, like everything else, they're quick to jump out there to print any nonsense. I'm not sure who the editors are there, but they have to pay at this time because of them too being irresponsible. And then we have union leaders calling for the swift implementation of the new minimum wage, which is $60,000. This has been on the burner. It was not completed during the time of the coalition or implemented during the time of the coalition. And of course, the big bad bullies came in and lots and lots of shouts about the implementation, and it could not have been implemented. And you know, it's 2 years plus, and we've still not seen the implementation of the minimum wage, the new minimum wage. But I'm happy that people like Carville Duncan and C. Paul Narayan, that they too are clamoring and they're calling for this implementation. And yes, while I'm on that, we had May Day 2022. Of course, you know, May Day this year was celebrated under the theme COVID, politics, and the working class. COVID, politics, and the working class. And we saw the return of 2 separate Labor Day rallies. Prior to 2015, we would have had that happening for 23 years. Somewhere there, between 19 and 23 years. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, we had one May Day march and rally. All of a sudden, well, of course, we had COVID that came and did the separation. We couldn't have any activities. But then in 2022, when we expected leaders, trade union leaders, leaders who profess to be trade unionists, when we expected to have this one May Day rally, we couldn't have that. So we had two. And you saw some of what transpired at the one that they held at the NIS ground. I'm not going to go too much into that, but I want to say to us, our workers have woken up. They are awake. And you can no longer tell them the fairy tale stories. So all the stories we've been telling them, well, not me, but they installed the folks who've been telling them about sugar and reliving sugar and waking sugar up from the dead. The workers have recognized that they've been lied to. Hence what transpired at that rally. People are grown, and like my friend would say, we big and we got sense. So the workers are speaking out. And then we have the issue of boat accidents. That is of grave concern. Boat capsizing in the river, boat capsizing there and boat capsizing there. I'm hoping that the authorities are going to look into these issues seriously, because just the other day we had two persons losing their lives, and then we had one in the Escobar River just the other day. Come on, we've got to be careful on our roadways and on our waterways. We need to be careful because lives are involved. So let us be responsible. Let us be responsible. And then we have to send out condolences to the family and friends of Chief Constable Peter Livingstone, who died after a brief illness. You know, it's so sad, and many of us don't understand. Life is so very fragile. We saw Peter on Sunday, May Day, and 2 days later, or a day later, 2 days later, I think it was, because I think it's yesterday he died. He's a dead man. And so it behoves us to do the right thing every time and all the time, and to be kind to everyone we meet along this way, because we don't know when it would be our time, when it would be our calling. And then we have the man who was wanted for the Sophia murder. He surrendered to the police. The man who was wanted for the Sophia murder, he surrendered to the police. And then we go a little more on police issue. We saw Soku making an arrest. They would have arrested former Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan. And then we saw the picket yesterday hosted by the People's National Congress in support of Mr. Jordan. However, he was released on his own recognizance, and as they continue to investigate. But what was he arrested for? He was arrested for the sale of some several acres of land at Ogle. I don't know. But the thing here is, we have started to get very petty. Give me a minute. Yes, we have started to get very petty. And so we're picking and picking and picking and picking. But that's another story. We'll get a little more into that. And oh, we're into the rainy seasons all again. All again, we're into the rainy seasons, and rain equals flooding. So we had the residents in Berbice at Anchorville coming out in their numbers protesting against the conditions that they have to live under. And I can tell you, I know what it's like. Fields are flooded, homes are flooded, streets are flooded. And I'm not sure what the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Public Infrastructure, and all of these people, I'm not sure what they are doing, but they love to go out there and big up their chests, you know, as people would say, big up their chest. Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing the other. Like I heard some folks saying the other day, people can't eat road. People can't eat roads, they can't eat buildings. So you have to create jobs for them, and you have to find ways and means to sustain them. So don't talk about you're building roads and 600 million in roads and so on. People can't eat that. So I want Egil, I want him to hear that. Don't be disruptive. Listen and do what is right. Listen and do what is right. And then we have this issue of the NIS being bankrupt. And so I want to ask the question, who caused NIS to be bankrupt? Who caused NIS to be bankrupt? You heard the Vice President the other day, And I'm happy that the Honorable Valda Lawrence responded to him very promptly. So people would understand that all these folks are bent on doing is misleading this nation and giving wrong information. But we are going to, like I said, these are just highlights. We are going to get more into that. But this evening, we are going to be focusing on education. We're focusing on education this week, today, as a matter of fact, and what has been happening and what is happening. Last week, I remember saying to you, talking about what is happening at the Tugville Secondary School. Well, for those of you who don't know, we have a compound that houses two schools, one secondary, one primary. As a matter of fact, our guests, they're going to talk to you more on this. And so I would want to invite our guests to come into studio. We have joining us from the PTA. We have them joining us from the PTA and the alumni. We have Mr. Royston Peters and we have Miss Rhonda Thomas. They are going to be joining us to tell us what has been happening at the level at Tugville. I don't want to give you too much, but let's have them come in. I think we are going to take a quick break while we have them come in. Operator, could we just take a break while we await the arrival of our guests?
And now, here is Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause. And now, here is Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause. And now, here is Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause.
Well, I'm not sure what is happening. We're trying to get our guests. I am not sure what is happening with our guests for this evening. But we're going to talk a little more on the whole issue of NIS being bankrupt. I am not sure whether people remember or people don't remember, but let me remind us that NIS was the agency that would have that monies were taken from for the Berbice Bridge. You remember that? NIS was the entity that was used. Their monies were used to build the Berbice Bridge. Monies from NIS were given to other people close to the regime then under the VP who was president there, Jagdeo. And now Jagdeo wants to come with a bold face to tell persons that NIS is bankrupt because of the coalition I mean, some people really got a lot of forgiveness to ask for. I mean, you're so bold to do that. You think people forgetting? People don't understand? Now, this is rather crazy. But just hold for me. I'm having one of our guests here, and I'm trying to find out what is happening. Miss Rhonda Thomas, good evening to you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening to you. And we are supposed to, our viewers are waiting for your arrival. I'm not sure what is happening at your end.
All right, I just arrived home, so I am at this.
So you're at, yes, thank you so much. Our guests, our viewers are waiting on you. Thank you so much. So here we have Miss Rhonda Thomas, who's going to be joining us shortly, as well as Mr. Royston Peters. They're going to be joining with us and they're going to tell us. But while they're joining us, I'm going to continue on this little talk we were having about NIS and NIS being bankrupt. And you know, that whole thing came out because there was this community outreach and so on in Bath settlement in Region 5. And here it is. I figure he's a pensioner. He was asking about increases in the NIS pension, why they're not having increases in NIS pension. And rather than saying, well, you know, we spent the monies out and we crippled NIS, it was easy to throw the blame somewhere else and to say somebody else crippled NIS, and that's how you can get your increases. But persons are sensible. Persons are sensible. Persons understand what needs to be done. Persons understand who's spending the nation's monies out. If we look at what is happening outside of NIS, if we look at what has been happening, we are seeing woeful wastage of monies. There are hundreds of people, thousands of Guyanese people who are suffering. But you know what? We're not finding time to meet their needs. We're not finding time to offer them the kind of assistance they need. But we find monies to do all sorts of things. And so we're going to Dubai, we're going here, we're going there. We're throwing the monies all over the place, creating all kind of fictitious companies and allowing them to lobby for contracts. Yes, those are the kinds of things we're doing. And then when we're finished doing that, we would want to throw the blame on somebody else to say, oh, this was not done by the previous administration. The APNU, AFC did not do this or they did not do that. And so we had to do it. And that's why we can't find monies to increase your salaries. That's why we can't find monies to increase your pension. That's why we can't find monies to do a whole host of things because somebody else mismanaged. When it is you who's mismanaging the monies. But our people are wise. Our people understand exactly what is happening and they know who did what and who not doing what. And then let's talk a little on education while we await our guests. Let's talk a little on education. I saw yesterday, I think it was, yes, I saw this wild statement out there that schools may remain open for July, August. And that for that period, and that is to facilitate filling of learning gaps. Well, let me say to some people who don't understand this thing. Old people got a saying that they say, well, rain can't fall, dew can't fall. And to correct some of the inaccuracies that were mentioned there, while the pandemic was upon us, schools were reopened and teachers were teaching virtually. Students and pupils were attending classes virtually. The minister herself was quoted as saying, when the GTU told its members to stay at home, that teachers were ignoring their union and they were going into schools and having classes. They were having classes at their homes, under their bottom houses. They were having classes. Maybe, you know, she probably forgot that she said those things. So it is not accurate to say nothing was happening and the children were left all alone. We were having classes. More than that, teachers were treading the road. They were treading the road, going out there, handing out worksheets, work booklets. They were collecting those and marking them. They were having one-on-one sessions with parents on Fridays. So I'm not sure what the minister is talking about. But you know, it's okay to say, to throw out your wild card out there to see the kind of reaction you would have. Because I don't understand how a minister would want to make that kind of bold statement and then double back after she recognized the kind of reactions that were had. She doubled back to say, well, oh, we're going to have consultations with stakeholders. Consultation with stakeholders. That's another story all by itself. That's another story all by itself. But I just want to let our teachers know and our parents know that we are not going to grind our teachers to stump. We're not going to grind our students to stump. Catching up on learning loss is a process. It's a process. And that process would require time. It's not an overnight process. It's not a process that could be remedied in 2 months, in a term, or in 2 terms. This is an ongoing process, and it would take us maybe 4 or 5 years to really be able to adjust and to be fully on to where we ought to be. So this wild thing about the July-August period, out of the window. We are not going to allow that to happen. You know, when the authors sat down and they crafted the Education Act, they did that out of wisdom. Hence the reason for the breaks that we have during the school year, the 3 breaks, which is simply saying to us that both the learners and their teachers, they have to be re-energized. They have to take time off to do reflection, to regroup, and to plan for the next term. Hence the 2 weeks, the 3 weeks, and that 2 months period that we have there. So for someone to come to tell teachers that they have to do this, they're going to be doing this, what would have been wise is if the minister had said, well, we are going to reach out to schools and have schools identify students and pupils or learners generally who have these deficiencies, where they can't recognize numbers, they can't recognize letters, they can't make the sound of letters, they can't read, and we plan special programs for them for a part of the vacation period. Special remedial programs we plan for them. But to come out there to say, you know, it is very, very irresponsible. And we're not taking that lightly. I'm not sure what is happening with our guests, but I think, okay, I noticed we have one guest there. This is Mr. Royston Peters, and okay, yes, we have Miss Thomas here with us. Good night to you folks, and welcome to this episode of Advancing the Cause. On this program, we usually share what is in the news, what is topical, and most of all, what is important to our people. Of course, on this program, we share what is accurate. We don't go out there with propaganda. We share what is accurate. And so while I'm focusing on education for this week, last week we did a little bit, I just want you to share with our viewers what is happening at the Tugville primary and the secondary schools, because last week I highlighted it and then it was all over the media where the secondary school was closed. Thanks for coming here, and we'd be happy for you to share with us what is the situation at Tugville Primary and the Tugville Secondary, since both of them are in the same compound. I'm not sure who would start first.
All right, good evening, Ms. McDonald, and thanks for having us. Um, I really welcome the opportunity to clarify a number of issues with respect to things happening in the Tugville schools. I think it was sometime in November when it became known, in recent times that is, that
Royston, let
there's
me
some
just
issues.
stop you. Royston, let me just stop you a little. I think you need to adjust your camera a little, and you're a little dark there. Could you just get some more light and adjust your camera, because when you're on, a part of your head is off.
Uh,
That's a little
is better now?
better. That's a little better.
Okay.
It's a little better there now.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. So you can
Right.
continue.
So I think the situation became known, well, sometime in November last, when at a meeting of the secondary schools PTA, a parent got shocked while bracing against one of the walls in the auditorium. That matter was reported not attended to. And so it was sometime in February this year when we had another meeting, and I learned that the situation still exists, that we thought of some action that must be taken to bring some immediate attention to the situation. We had a merging of the schools PTAs, the primary PTA, the secondary PTA, and we had the involvement of the school's alumni. And we exhausted all sorts of options to treat the matter. Went to the ministry, alumni and the PTA went to the ministry, attempted to speak to the PEO and a number of things, a number of meetings of that sort, none bore fruit. And so we thought that we need to find some way to bring some attention to the matter. We went to the Ghana Fire Service, we invited them to come and make an inspection of what's happening on the site. Since most of the issues then we thought were electrical in nature and would require the involvement of either the fire service or GPL. So the fire service was invited. They came, did an inspection, and they made a recommendation which was sent to the Ministry of Education. That recommendation was sent to them sometime in March of this year, and it is not known that the issues outlined or highlighted in those recommendations were attended to or addressed in any significant way. And so I think what may have happened is that they had technicians go in to fix water pumps and electrical lights and so on, but I'm not certain to what extent those things that they went to fix are related to the issues that affected the school. And so last Monday, when school was to be resumed, I think the education department attempted to insist that the secondary school reopens. The teachers haven't been informed of the issues, stood their ground and refused to recommence sessions. And so the ministry was involved, and that school is set in recess. So the secondary school was in recess ever since last Monday. The school, the PTA of the primary met Wednesday, following Wednesday, highlighted the situation, and the parents then, having been apprised of what exists, were in agreement with some course of action that will preserve the life and limb of the primary students who are in the same general space. And so Tuesday, again, the PTA met, engaging the teachers and pupils, and we agreed that because of the danger that exists and the fact that the secondary school, which accommodates the larger, more responsible children, have been closed, there is no sense in having the primary students occupy that same space. Both students and teachers occupy the same space, knowing fully well that the young ones require more management and care and attention than the seniors. And worse yet, the situations that brought the secondary into recess still existed. and not knowingly brought into, well, any kind of remedial work being brought into being to fix that situation. And so today, the PTA organized and they closed the gate of school, and they informed the parents that there will be no school until situations are addressed. And so that is what transpired today. The primary school has been closed. Um, and we had a visit by two persons from the ministry. I think one Mr. Bridgewater and the other one Mr. Adams. They came down um, under the pretext of wanting to gain entry by some forced means. And after engagement, they resisted that. And from what I learned, they agreed that the situation has to be addressed and that some communication will be made available between the parties for the way forward. But while that is done, we are still interested in the education of our youngsters, and so we're exhausting every possible option to ensure that the youngsters obtain some scope of education, and we're looking to have engagement whether online or to find some suitable areas in some affordable place that we can be able to afford them the requisite teaching and information sharing. So that, in a nutshell, is what exists at the moment. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Ms. Thomas, to speak some bit of what happens on the secondary side, and perhaps to give any further updates on issues I may have missed. Thank you.
Good. So, Mr. Peters, you're saying that this issue was ongoing since November of last year, and you're not sure of how much work, if any at all, was really done there to remedy this situation. Well, it's obvious that nothing much was done, because I remember Monday last, they the entire, well, Miss Thomas will tell us some more about that, so let me not go into that. But you're saying that as of today, both the primary and the secondary schools are closed until further notice.
That's right. That's correct.
It's just alarming. It's just alarming, because I was just referring to statements made by the Minister of Education, who's talking about using the July-August period to catch up on lost time, learning time for the learners. But here is it, you have two schools. There was enough time when we had COVID and we hadn't classes, face-to-face classes. There was enough time to have had all these works done in the school. Now, on one hand, you want to beat up on COVID and the teachers, because you're talking about learning loss. And on the other hand, you are creating the same learning loss. But we'll talk a little more about that. Mrs. Thomas or Miss Thomas? Either of the two?
It's Miss Thomas.
Miss Thomas. So Miss Thomas, it's good to have you. I think somebody's speaker is on. You'll turn your volume a little down. And Miss Thomas, we'll have you give our viewers an in-depth walk into what is happening at the secondary sector.
Mr. Peters has given a summary of where we are now, but to pedal back a little bit, he was right in saying up to the 25th of April, which was the first day of school, we would not have had any work done in order to rectify the specific situation that we're talking about, that brought us to the point where we didn't really want to be in that space because we didn't feel safe. Before I go any further, yes, I am a teacher at the Tugville Secondary School, and very, very importantly, and most important to me, I am a parent of a child attending the Tugville Primary School. That is most important to me. Yes, so up until the 25th of April, no work was done in order to rectify the issues with the electricals that we were having. But since we took action, the ministry came in and they did quite a bit of work. in taking all of the panels out of the walls and so on, because the major problem that is contributing to, or that is causing degradation in the electrical system is the water. We have water from the roofs leaking into the wall, lodged in the wall in which the panels are. We have wires running in the wall from since the building was first commissioned, which I understand it's about 51 years ago. We have some of those wiring taken out of the wall, but we still have some that are still in. And that, coupled with the water problem, the drainage of the roof and the cracks in the roof and that sort of stuff, contributed to this major electrical system going as bad as it is. So for the works that would have been done so far, some of the wires, for example, in the auditorium, they would have disconnected whatever was in the wall, lay out a fresh circuit on that one side, put everything in conduit and, looking good, trying to keep the codes and so on. In other places, they would have just worked on the panels alone, but haven't done any rewiring and so. But while you take the panel out of the wall, if you have electrical wires with compromised insulation, you still have a problem, right? And that was something that still is an issue at this time. Even though all of this work was done, we still have that issue because the water issue remained. We also had instances where sections were not earthed. As a matter of fact, the main distribution panel room, that wasn't earthed, and that is something that we pointed out since last November, right? I have had, I don't know if you can call it a privilege, but every time a contractor comes to the school to look at any issue, the tour is mine to give, right? So we would have had many electricians, we would have many building contractors and so on, plumbers coming and looking at the issue to try to figure out a solution. And in some cases, some persons didn't want to offer a solution because of the kind of work that they were expected to produce, right? And they knew to themselves that producing this kind of work is not going to solve the issue. And if you're looking for a solution, it makes no sense spending a lot of money doing what I would call patchwork and still have the problem persist, or in the next couple of weeks you get another phone call or another letter saying that something else is happening. So while a lot of work has been done in terms of removing all of these distribution panels from in the walls, we still have some issues with the old wiring that is still being used, that are in the walls, the very walls with the water. And so the problem persists in some areas. So what we would have demanded as a joint committee, the PTA, primary, PTA, secondary, and the alumni, we have demanded that our children and our teachers must not go back into the environment until the environment is certified safe. And when we say certified safe, we mean electrical inspection and a certificate that says that our electrical system has passed and is up to standard, is up to code. A structural analysis and a document that says that the structure is sound and safe for us to work in, around, and under, right? And also for the water systems, the wastewater systems, the flood water issues. We have flooding. Flooding is a big thing at our school, right? One day of rain and we have flooded classrooms. And that is because the environment around the school is higher than the school compound. And so the perimeter drain actually drains into the compound. So yes, they set up a system where they did as much sealing as possible on the perimeter, and we're using automatic pumps to pump the water out. Our school doesn't have um, groundsmen, right? We don't have maintenance people to be there and monitor these things happening. So from time to time, you're gonna find that you have a breakdown, and then you have to wait until whenever a contractor is sent to do the repairs. And in the meantime, we sit in that water, we work in that water, we work in the mess, right? I have been at the school for quite a number of years, and I must say there has been a lot of improvement in the conditions under which we've had to work, right? But despite these improvements, and I mean, you would have taken a tour of the compound as it is, and imagine what it was before what it is now, right? And I'm telling you, there was drastic improvement in the environment, but it's still as bad as it is. So safety first. I have learned that, and I have lived and still live by that, because I work in electrical, right? I am also teaching in industrial technology. And this is what I have to teach to my students: safety first. Something that was said to me yesterday by someone else that works in electrical, he said, if we were to have to talk about hazard, or to write a report about hazard, or some kind of a thesis about hazard, Tocqueville School
Would have been the
would
school.
be the best case study for such, right? Because of the number of things that are off when it comes to safety. Basic electrical safety, basic occupational safety and health violations, simple things, right? Which can have complicated effects. So that basically is the situation. And from my perspective, based on my training in electrical, based on my training in occupational safety and health, we are not quite there yet in terms of getting the environment to a standard where it is safe enough for our children to return there. And I refuse to send my son to that environment, because I have a 7-year-old that is full of energy. You understand me? And to think about the possibilities when a 7-year-old leaves the classroom to go to the washroom, or leaves the classroom to go for break, to think about what can happen. I don't even want to process that. So I will not send my child to that environment, and I will encourage parents not to send their children to that environment until such a time that we have people who are qualified, right? People who are assigned the responsibility of certifying safety, until those people do that and say to us, hey, you can walk into this environment and you don't have to worry about anything.
Well, you and Mr. Peters said a mouthful, and I'm sure our viewers are there, and they're trying to figure out what is happening at that school. I'm reading some of the comments, and I am amazed at some of the comments that people have made there. But this is reality. Uh, Miss Thomas, operator, could you have them right? Miss Thomas, I was about to ask, because when I'm hearing you speaking about what is happening there in terms of the electrical work and the faults and so on, I was about to ask you what you teach at school, but I'm happy you brought that out. With this problem that we're having there, in my own words, I want to say maybe we had some quacks coming in there to check on this and to check on that, and they get a little money here and they get a little money there, which for me is a waste of our resources. Because rather than having somebody come and do a little patch thing here and a little patch thing there, we should have had competent people coming there doing a general overlook or review or inspection of the building, well, not of the building, of the buildings, so we can see exactly what is happening. And then probably the ministry could have decided to do this in a phased bit. Because of course I know to do the entire school, it would be a huge sum, plus whatever else has got to be added on for somebody to get a little piece from it. And this is Guyana, this is where we live, and these are the things that happens. But all we getting is a little thing here. Somebody come fix a bulb, somebody come tap a little thing there, and so the whole issue would have escalated to where it is now. Like you said, this building is 51 years old. The secondary and the primary, they're both wired together. They feed off of the same. They come from they take their energy from the same feed.
That's correct.
And so if we have shocking happening in the secondary section, then it's obvious that at some point we're going to have that happening in the primary section. I would have visited that school. I'm seeing water, a whole pool under the primary school. I'm seeing pools of water in the secondary school. Right when you're about to go to the grade 9 block, water there. You have the flat roof, water there. I mean, common sense should say to somebody, hey, bore some holes, put some little pipes there, and allow the water to drain out. Whenever it rains, allow the water that would allow the water to drain. But we're not seeing any of that. So you have on those flat buildings where they have squared edges around them, all the water lodging there, and you have electrical wires running right across the tops of those flat buildings. And of course, that's a hazard. But I'm happy that our teachers and our parents and the alumni, they have taken a decision to force the hand of the ministry to close both schools so that we can effect the kind of work that is supposed to be done there. But in all of this, while we are looking for the solution to our building, what recommendation would we have for the Ministry of Education in terms of our learners being engaged? Because I know we said they'll be engaged online, but how many of our learners have access to internet facility, one, and they have access to gadgets so that we can have this kind of learning that we expect to happen? We don't have a whole lot. So what other alternative do we have to engage our learners?
Miss McDonald, before I give a response to that, I want to comment on the roof and the draining of the roof issue. So far, based on what I've seen done, the majority, how do I put this? All right, based on what was done so far with the with dealing with the runoff water and so on from the roof, the works would ensure that the majority of the water will run off quickly. Now that has been done already. There are a few sections where you need to do something more to get the water to run off. However, it's not just the water running off. We have in the concrete roof, you have cracks along the slab lines, right? And when I see cracks in concrete roof, I wonder about the kind of support that is in there. We know that we have steel in the concrete, and we know how steel reacts to water. The cracks along the slab lines is not so much a worry for me, but the diagonal cracks are the ones that bother me, right? Because we know that when we cast concrete and slabs, you always have those lines. The concrete doesn't gel to itself after setting, and I know that you must have some sort of a support in the areas, especially suspended concrete. You have some sort of a support in the area where you have one slab meeting the other. But diagonal cracks tell me that those are other areas that don't have the same kind of support
Mm-hmm.
that are opening up. And what's causing it to open up, right? How much time do we have for this to remain a safe zone, a safe place for you to walk under, for you to stand under and teach? For example, in my department, there are so many cracks on that flat roof, horizontal, diagonal. There's so many that you literally, even when the rainy season is gone, a long time after the rainy season is gone, you're still standing in pools of water at the front of the room to teach. Understand me? Um, and ever so often you recognize something new, a new crack developing. And every time you have a crack, the spaces between them get smaller and smaller. So who's to say to me when any part of that would fall out while I'm teaching? Right? And so this is where the structural element comes in, not just the electrical. This is where the structure becomes a bother to me, right? And that's me standing there and teaching. I also have to protect the children that I'm teaching, right? Because I know a little bit more about this than they do. This might be fun for them, right? But for me, it's no fun at all, right? And yes, I have some amount of knowledge, but the fear carries for other teachers who do not have so much knowledge about concrete and structures and so on, but they are seeing these things and they're using their common sense, right? So that is one of the reasons why we need a structural analysis. Coming to dealing with teaching, online teaching for us definitely is not the best way to go. It can be effective, but only if every student and every teacher is afforded the same opportunity. And that is not so. That is not so. The facilities for online is not available for most of the school. All right. And teachers struggle with this as well as students struggle with this. But we do our best. We go all out. Whatever arrangements we have to make, we make them, right? So that we are equipped, or at least we are in a position where we can facilitate online classes. But the children and their parents, some demands we cannot, even no matter, you might demand forever, but they're just unable to get the necessary tools and equipment that are required to be a part of online teaching. So definitely we need our face-to-face classes if we are to be effective and efficient in reaching our entire school. So to do face-to-face classes, obviously we don't want to be in that environment if we don't feel safe in that environment. And if you can guarantee that this environment is safe, but we have alternatives that we can use that the ministry can explore, and we have suggested some of these alternatives. I mean, when we first had a discussion about it coming on to the reopening of school among our staff, right? We would have made some of these recommendations in writing to the Department of Education about accommodating us at a different location so that we can meet our children, so that we can teach, and so that we can carry on with educating our nation's children. But we haven't had a single comment from any person within the Department of Education in regards to those recommendations.
Miss Thomas, I know that this is a huge task for you and your colleagues. I want to compliment you and your colleagues for what you have been doing, but you can't do it alone. And therefore, I want to call on the Minister of Education. Go visit schools in South Georgetown. Every time we have the reopening of schools, we see you in North Georgetown, we see you in East Georgetown. What is happening to the schools in South Georgetown? Take some time off and go visit them. We have school on Friday. Go visit some schools in South Georgetown and ask what are the problems that teachers are having. Have consultations with the parents. Listen to their concerns rather than you making all these statements and talking about consultation with hairstyles and all kinds of things. We got real problems in schools, real problems. Fix them. Mr. Peters, I know that our time is counting down, but I'm going to ask you the same question. What other forms of recommendation do you have, would you want to propose in terms of being able to meet our learners? Because like Miss Thomas just said, the online classes is not the thing. It's not going to be able to meet the majority of our students. I remember talking with the primaries today, and they said out of a population of 404 or 440, somewhere there, all they can reach via online classes is 100. So we're not making sense. So is there a recommendation that you would want to offer, or a recommendation that the PTA is thinking about putting on the table so that our pupils can be engaged as well as our students?
Right. So education for our children or our pupils are our prime concern. We are exhausting every possible measure. Today we visited a few options in south of Georgetown to see what facilities are available that we can share space with. We'll continue doing that. Um, and so we are looking to see wherein we can find some space to afford those children or people face-to-face sessions. But I think from what is currently existing, we may have to go share some space in places where those spaces are available. Our first option is somewhat available school that may have a few classrooms available to try to use that. Where that is not possible, we'll see what other spaces there are available that are safe spaces that we can use for youngsters to be given their learning and their education. Um, and so in South of Georgetown, we have the South Renville Primary. You can examine that to see what exists. We'll exhaust every other possible measure in areas close by. Um, we learned, we learned um, by way of just shared information that even though we have areas like enterprise, they may not have adequate space. So all the options we're examining to see which will best facilitate the process so our children can continue their learning. Um, Even though we'll be celebrating our arrival day tomorrow, the PTA will continue to examine options. And so my holiday tomorrow is a working holiday by which I'll seek to find space to accommodate our youngsters to continue their education, because that for us is prime concern. And I want to indicate that the closure or the attempt to avoid our teachers and people being in a space in Tocqueville that we have declared as being a dangerous space is not for any reason because they are unwilling to work. They would like to work, they want to do what they have to do, but it is just unsafe to have them in that space. And so the teachers were all there today, prepared to do their work, but because of our concern for their safety, we thought it fit to disallow them that the opportunity of getting into that school compound. And we will find a way to provide space, accommodation, so they can have face-to-face learning, and where possible, we can have that perhaps one third or less afforded um, the online if it becomes necessary. So you'll have to have maybe a shared arrangement in terms of providing for them, but we'll exhaust all options possible to make sure that happens. And
Well,
it will go both primary, and I know the secondary are using online. Even that option, we were examining to see how best we can find spaces by which the secondary too can have some shared space to provide them with online a face-to-face engagement again.
Well, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Peters, I want to thank you so much for coming on Advancing the Cause to share with our viewers and everyone else, those that are here, those that are in the Caribbean, those that are in North America and in the UK who are watching us, that they understand exactly what is happening in that Tugville secondary and primary block. And why is it that the PTA would have taken such a stand? Um, our safety, like I would say all the time, safety is first. I cannot go into a building which is not safe to profess or to pretend that I want to teach, because not even the teaching would be effective, because you're always going to be thinking, what if this piece of concrete block fall down? What if the light starts to spark? What if something happens? So in order to avoid all of those, we need to fix these buildings. We need to do inspection, frequent inspecting of these buildings, especially the ones that are so old. And I wonder, why do we have an engineering department at the Ministry of Education? Why do we have it? Your job there is to go check on schools before schools reopen. If schools call to say that there are issues, go check and see what is happening and advise correctly. Don't just come and do a little slam dashing and think that that's all right. Because what is going to happen is just what has happened at Tocqueville is going to happen in many, many schools. And I'm hoping that this would be a learning experience for the Ministry of Education and all the departments across this country, so that they can start monitoring what is happening in their schools. Again, thank you for being here with us on Advancing the Cause. We look forward to hearing updates from you on what is happening at Tocqueville. And I want to say to you that Advancing the Cause would always be here to advance your cause, because your cause is our cause. And our cause is the children, our nation's children, who we want to see develop into being productive citizens in this country, who can offer their services to us when we would have reached that stage when we can't do any more for them. So thank you for being here with us once again. And to our viewers, thank you for always being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week at 6:30. I know this week we had a late start, but next week at 6:30, we'll see you again for another episode of Advancing the Cause. And just before we go, let me remind you that our local health ministry, they are monitoring this new strain of Omicron virus. Let me remind you, Corona is not through the window. And so while lots and lots of persons are parading the streets without masks and they're in large groupings and all sorts of things, let me warn you to stay away from large gatherings, wear your mask, continue to sanitize, continue to wash your hands, and please encourage others to do the same thing, because your life means a whole lot to us and to the people of this country. So that's all for now on Advancing the Cause. Do take care. See you again next week. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you and bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.